On my recent trip to California, I was able to do this fun piece for my friend. It is always fun to use glaze. It adds such dimension to a piece. I first painted this piece with a combination of jalapeno and coffee bean. I use a 50-50 mix and it creates this beautiful green color. We did 2 coats and let it dry for 24 hours. Then adding this black glaze to the top, I'm using a chip brush and just slowly adding lines in sections. And then I have a cotton sock, which I find to be easy to use and blend in the glaze, so it wipes back and blends at the same time. When working with glaze, try and work in a quick manner, not too fast, but also it does set up pretty quickly. So I like to go from one direction and then go to the other, making straight swipes with my cotton cloth. I used a chip brush to add this on just because it's what I had. We didn't take a whole lot of supplies when I flew out to California. So using a chip brush works great because it does not have to be fine lines or anything like that. It's basically just something that I use to get the medium onto the table, and then using swipes with the cotton cloth and making sure that is damp really helps to blend in the glaze. And as you can see, I can go back, and with the cloth it does pick up glaze as I go, so sometimes I will use just the cloth itself without even adding glaze. And then as time goes on, if you continue to pick up enough glaze, you may want to rinse off your cloth to start with a clean piece to make sure that you're not adding too much glaze back in. So now moving to the bottom part of the table, the legs and the trestle part, and what I like to do is add the glaze again, pulling up and down or in the direction of the grain of the wood. Because this piece does not have any real detail in the wood and no grooves to allow the glaze to set in, I like to make it look almost like a wood grain look. So pulling that grain with the chip brush is a good way to add a little bit of detail, especially when it gets a little bit thicker in the corners and it's hard to get your cloth in those corners of the wood. I use the chip brush to pull out a little bit and then wipe with the cloth, and then my final pull from the corner with the chip brush will just add that little bit of grain look. And it also will help bring out the extra glaze that is in the corners there. Here's an example of where I'm not adding any glaze from the brush onto the top part of this wood, but I'm using the cloth and what was in the cloth to spread the glaze. Now I'm pulling out from the edge, just getting a little bit of extra texture look there. And if you can tell, I did take off some of the glaze off of the brush, just dabbing it on the paper to make sure that there's not much on there. And then I'll just take that little bit of the brush and pull it from each corner. So when I'm doing this side of the leg, you want to notice that sometimes there's a little overlap on the first side that I did. So just make sure that you don't have pooling or extra glaze on the opposite edges of where you're working. An easy way to do it is just wipe it slightly with your cloth. So when working on the sides of the table, I like to add the glaze on and then do 1 or 2 swipes across just to bring it into a even texture. This table does have a leaf in it, and I did have the leaf in while I was doing the original glazing, but then also pushed it together without the leaf and just made sure that when the leaf is not out, it looks uniform. I did that on the top as well. I pulled in some areas where there needed to be a little bit more glaze. I added more in, and especially where the table came together, I wanted to make it look uniform when the table was closed and it looked like all one piece. So that's it for this table. It was fun. It was a fun project to do while I was out there with my friend. Adding glaze and paint to a piece can really just make it look very unique. We ended up doing a lamp as well, and then after I left, her husband painted the back of their front door so that when you looked from the one area of the house to the other, it all came together, and that green pop just brought some fun life into their home.